Hello everybody and welcome to a new video. This is Lolcohol and this is going to be an update on the Bleed Lacerate Lowlife Gladiator that you saw in the previous video. So, after actually playing it, I can confirm this build is excellent. I've just hit yellow maps. I'm around level 87, almost level 88, and it's pretty much melting everything that I've come into contact with. Of course, I haven't made it into red maps, but I figured if any of you are behind me or trying to consider whether or not you should play this build, I think this one is a winner. It's very tanky, it's got good clear, it's got good single target, and all of this for under 1x makes this a perfect league starter. So what you're seeing in the background now is the Lacerate Gladiator on very, very budget gear. It's currently using 2 Dreadbeaks. These are the most expensive part of the build, coming in at a 35 chaos each, so you need 2, which is about 70 chaos. The rest is all just super cheap found gear that I found from ultimatums and things like that, so you don't have to worry about going out and spending a ton of money to get this work. Okie dokes, let's have a look at the gems and then we'll have a look at the gear. So currently main links are going to be Lacerate with multi-strike, melee fizz, brutality, and bloodthirst. Bloodthirst is the main damage of this skill. So the way this works, supported attacks deal added physical damage with weapons equal to 2% of maximum life while on low life, and supported attacks deal 19% more damage. So we have 7,100 life. 2% of that is 140 added physical damage, which is a ton. So you can see here, let me just turn on my thing. You can see we've got 42,000 damage. Let's just take that out. 24,000. So this gem alone is pretty much doubling our damage, and the more life that we add, we get more survivability, but we also get a ton more damage. So that's why we are going low life. This gem only works while you're on low life, so that's why we will use it along with low life, and I'll explain how to get low life in a bit. But this is currently just a 5 link. I'm thinking the 6th link will be possibly Chance to Bleed might be good. Swift Affliction might be good. I'm not 100% sure, but whatever the 6th gem will be, it'll add a lot more damage. Looking at the other gems, we've got Whirling Blades attached with faster attacks. This just helps us move around a bit more quickly. I also have a dash. Then we've got Ancestral Warchief. This helps us just deal a bit more damage, especially with single target. And you can see this does a little bit of extra damage and 32% more melee damage while Totem is active. So this just adds a lot more damage and it helps you kill stuff. Let's move on to links. So I've got an Immortal Call setup. Immortal Call, increased duration, and cast when damage taken. This just helps keep us alive a bit more easily. And I have an Enlighten, which I'm going to possibly use with some of my other gems so that I don't reserve as much life. But we have to reserve 50% at least for our low life to be considered active. Next, for auras, we've got Malevolence. This says you and nearby allies deal 20% more damage over time, and this build is primarily bleeding damage, so Malevolence is good. I was using Pride before, but I swapped over to Malevolence now that the majority of our damage is actually bleeding. So here you can see this is the hit damage, and here is the bleeding damage. So the bleeding damage is actually more, which is why I'm using this. I've also got Arrogance, so supported skills have 19% increased aura effect, and they reserve life instead of mana, which doesn't really matter because we are actually a blood magic build, which you can see over here. We've got blood magic. I'll go over this in a sec, but since it's relevant, let's have a look. We've also got Mortal Conviction. You can only have 1 permanent non-banner aura on you from your skills. Your non-banner skills that create permanent auras on you do not reserve life. So we can use this Arrogance, which has a cost and reservation multiplier of 202%, which is quite a lot, We can use that with Malevolence, but Malevolence is absolutely free because of Mortal Conviction. So that's a really nice little bonus. Let's go over next. Pride, I'm not actually using. Herald of Purity, I'm not actually using. I reserve too much mana if I actually activate Herald of Purity, you'll see. Too much life. There, I've got 2,000 life. So that's not going to work. Blood and Sand, this is very important. So Blood and Sand allows you to switch between stances. So you can see in Sand stance, I deal less area damage, but I have more area of effect. So you can see the area of effect's much larger. Whereas in Blood stance, I deal more area damage, but I have less area of effect. So you can see it's a bit smaller and you can swap between them. So when I'm doing single target or I just need to push out a bit more damage, I will swap between these. I'll go to Blood stance generally for bosses and then Sand stance if I'm doing clear. That's a very, very important skill to have. Next up, Steelskin. I've put this on our left click, meaning that it pretty much is always up. This is another layer of survivability. Also, we're using Warbanner. Warbanner is very nice. I'm not going to read out what it does to you, but it's nice if you fight a boss, you drop your Warbanner, or if you're in an Ultimatum, you drop the Warbanner and it'll give you even more damage. Corrupting Fever. Now, this is another new skill. So this essentially applies Corrupting Blood to enemies, which is perfect for this build. So it's just a buff that you pretty much hit once, and it reactivates after spending 201 life. So this is pretty much always up. If you just hit this button at the start of a map, you won't generally have to use it again, and it just adds even more damage and bleeding to the build. And last but not least, and most important, Petrified Blood. This is what keeps us alive with this tiny little life pool that we have. So you see, we've got 7,100 life, but only 3,200 of that is unreserved. On any other build, you would just get absolutely exploded in maps and you wouldn't survive very long. But Petrified Blood, what it does, firstly, it reserves 35% of your mana, which generally, if you're using these other things like Warbanner and Blood and Sand, along with Petrified Blood, that'll get you past that 50% reserve threshold. And then life recovery, other than Flasks, cannot recover life above low life. When taking damage from hits, 40% of life lost below half-life is prevented. Then 82% of life lost prevented this way is lost over 4 seconds. So what's great about this is that any kind of quick, bursty, spiky damage is mitigated and you don't get popped in the way that a lot of other builds do, where something just hits you really hard and you die immediately. Of course, that is still going to happen, especially in really juice maps, but we get away with having such a small life pool because a lot of the damage is kind of spread out over a period of time instead of being dealt instantly. So you need to start using Petrified Blood if you want to use this build. Let's move on to the gear, and we're going to start off with Dreadbeak. This is super strong on this build. So the first mod on this, 100% increased damage when on low life. So this thing gives us 100% increased damage, and this is global, it's not just for this weapon. So this is technically a 650 PDPS sword that costs 35 chaos, and it's probably only going to get cheaper from now on. What other swords can you think of, one-handed swords, that have 650 PDPS? There are not any, and if they are, they do not cost 35 chaos. So this is a ridiculously powerful sword for this build, and we're going to be using 2. So these are going to be the most expensive things for the budget build. I paid 40 chaos for one and 35 for the other, so the price is already dropping, and you're just not going to get much better than this unless you go mirror tier. So Dreadbeak is kind of best in slot at this stage. As for helmets, I'm just doing life stacking to further increase the damage of Bloodthirst. So I'm looking for life on everything and then just resistances to cap out resistances. As for armor, same thing. Life, resistance. Amulet, I got a blood grip. I'm using it because I couldn't find anything better. It adds Flat Fizz. Flat Fizz is great for this build. Life is great for this build. And also another thing, moving while bleeding doesn't cause you to take extra damage. Something I have noticed in lab, this build struggles because traps just chow through your little life pool. So when I am doing lab or running through traps and trials, I will turn off my Petrified Blood because DPS doesn't matter and it'll just help you stay alive when running through blades and things like that. As for rings, so I have a vulnerability on hit ring, and you're probably thinking, how the heck do you have a vulnerability on hit ring? It's like day 3 or day 2. Well, I don't know. Does Friday count as a day? I don't think so. It's like day 1.5 at this point. But you can get one of these yourself very, very easily, and you don't have to pay a huge amount for it. All you need is a ring with the Warlord influence, and it has to be item level 75 plus. If you get item level 75, you can get T2 vulnerability, and I think it's I80 plus for tier 1 vulnerability. I went with a I level 78 ring. It was about 5 chaos, and then all you need to do is find a harvest with reforge a rare item with new random modifiers, including a caster modifier. Pretty much all cursors, actually all cursors, have the caster tag. And other than that, I believe there is vulnerability, flammability, and cast speed. I think those are the only 3 mods on rings with the caster tag. So if you find one of these, and these are very common in Harvest, and Harvests have been very common, you spend 5 chaos on a ring, and you use Reforge, including a caster modifier, and I believe I got this on my first try. It might take you a couple of tries, but again, these are very common, so vulnerability ring is great. If you don't have one of these, you will probably need to use a vulnerability curse and then manually cast it when you are fighting bosses and stuff, but seriously, 5 chaos and a harvest and you have a vulnerability ring. On this side, same thing. This is actually a really bad ring, but I'm using it mainly for resistances. What you're looking for on rings is physical damage to attacks, life resistances. Gloves, same thing, life physical damage and resistances, belt, life resistances, boots, life resistances and movement speed. It's all very straightforward for the budget version. Of course, once we get into the more endgame version, which I'm not going to show right now, we're going to be looking for things like physical damage over time and bleeding damage and those sorts of things. But for now, all of this gear is really cheap stuff that I found. I didn't buy any of this and it's more than enough. As for flasks, I'm just running 2 flasks. Panicked is nice because it's instant recovery when on low life, and as you know, we are always on low life. Then I'm using a granite flask just for more armor, a quicksilver, and a quartz flask for phasing. You can buy a lionized raw, which will make you do even more damage. I don't know what they cost right now. I will probably buy one at some stage and swap out this quartz flask, but for now, this flask setup should be fine. Alrighty, let's hop over to the passive tree and have a look. So we are mainly stacking physical damage and life. So following this tree, life, 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 physical damage, life, physical damage, life, life, life. As you can see, it's pretty much all life, life, a jewel, and Crimson Dance. Now this is very important. You can inflict bleeding on an enemy up to 8 times. Your bleeding does not deal extra damage while the enemy is moving. 50% less damage with bleeding. This allows us to stack 8 bleeds, and you can see each of these bleeds does a ton of damage. Let me just turn on Blood Stance. You can apply 8 bleeds, each doing 18,000 damage per second. That's a ton. And this is also why we're using multi-strike, so we can apply those bleeds more quickly. And it also allows us to kind of see a pack of mods, run, hit them, run away, and before they die, I'm already over here, and the bleed will finish them off. Then over here, we're going for Bloodletting, which is more damage over time with bleeding. I've grabbed these, Proficiency and Hard Knocks. Don't feel bad if you need to take these to equip your gear. That's not a problem, and you don't have to go out of your way to grab those. Over here, we've got more life. And I've actually grabbed Utmost Might just to stack even more life and physical damage. As you can see, 2 strength is 1 life. We've got 600 strength, which is 300 life. And 5 strength is 1% melee physical damage, so that's another 120% melee physical damage. This is really, really nice to have. And as we spoke about, we've got blood magic, so we're just using blood magic and mortal conviction, which I spoke about, which allows us to run malevolence for free. Then we've got Blade Master. This is just more damage with swords and more damage with ailments. Same on this side, damage over time multi with bleeding and ailments and bleeding. Here we've got Juggernaut, more life, more armor, barbarism, life, resistance, and Resolute Technique. This just guarantees that our hits always hit. We don't worry too much about crits with this build, so unless you are stacking accuracy, this is a great way to increase your DPS. Then we're moving over to Vanquisher. Crush enemies for 4 seconds when you hit them while they are on full life. Crushed enemies lower physical damage reduction by 15%, so this is more damage and more physical damage over time multiplier, more physical damage. It's all very straightforward. Life, life, physical damage, life, life, physical damage, and yeah, life, 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 physical damage, and over here, more life. So at level 87, this is pretty much what the tree looks like. If you want to see this in more detail, I have got a POB, which I will link in the description below, and it is segmented. So it'll show you from levels 1 to 10, get this, from levels 10 to 20, get this, and so on. So if I've gone over this a bit quickly and you don't know where to start, just check the POB and check at the bottom, because it will tell you exactly what to level and when. While I'm at it, and before we go, I just want to speak about leveling. Leveling was mostly very smooth on this build, but there were some times where I felt my damage just wasn't up to scratch. I mainly leveled with Perforate instead of Lacerate, and I occasionally changed my links and updated them as I was going through the campaign. I've made a spreadsheet where I've explained all of that and showed where I got links and different support gems and how I changed them as I level. So I'm not going to go through every single iteration of that. Check out the spreadsheet. It's linked in the description and you'll be able to see. But yeah, overall leveling process pretty smooth, but you need to make sure that you are keeping your weapons up to date. So unlike a lot of spell builds where a large amount of the damage is actually coming from the gem levels, with this build and most physical builds, you'll need to find and upgrade your weapons pretty regularly, maybe once an act, once every 2 acts or so, just to make sure that your DPS is staying up to scratch. So if you feel like, oh, the damage is terrible, check your weapons. You might be using weapons from like 3 acts ago and they really need updating. So what I did, if my damage was low, I would just go to a vendor and try find the best looking sword base, and then I would apply 4 blacksmith's whetstones to it. Just remember, when it's normal quality, 4 whetstones will put it up to 20%. So I applied that, then I would hit it with an Ulk, or I would hit it with an essence or something like that, just to keep my damage updated. So if you're struggling with damage, check out your weapons. That's the most important thing. And once you get a nice weapon, it should be able to carry you through the acts. However, transitioning to low life and blood magic on this build can be a bit tricky at first, because you'll feel like you're suddenly very squishy and you're not quite sure what to do. That happened to me probably for the first 5-10 maps or so, where I was like ironing it out. What I found is that once I hit about 5,500 life, I was very comfortable on my low life. But if you are struggling with it, what you can do is take out Bloodthirst and swap it for another gem like Ruthless or Maim or something like that, or Chance to Bleed, and just get rid of the Bloodthirst and take off Petrified Blood, and that'll open up your life pool to be much higher. Also, then you won't be getting the damage from Dreadbeak, but you won't be dying all the time. However, I don't remember exactly what point it was, but I think once I had reached about 6,000 life or so, I felt very, very comfortable on low life. But just feel it out, experiment, and you will find a point where you are able to more comfortably make that transition, because it is a bit of an adjustment to make. But at this point, I am very, very, very rarely dying, except to crazy ultimatum things that are just, I've pushed too far. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video, folks. Remember to check out the path of building, but also the spreadsheet that will help you with the leveling process. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments below or join the Discord. And I'm very happy for you to PM me and tell me if you're having problems and ask me how you can fix it. Don't worry about it. I'm not some scary streamer dude. Just message me. I'm not going to be upset. I'm very, very happy to help. And if you have been playing this build, let me know what your experience has been, because it's been great for me. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe. And remember, ask any questions in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you like the video, and follow me on Twitch. Twitch, yeah. If you want to ask me questions, also come to Twitch. That's fine too. Okay, everyone. Bye. Have a good day. See ya.
Divine power! Divine power! It's branching, exile. You're making me nervous.